deployment is the most important part of any game, because you can lose a game because of bad deployment. In fact, I would say in the last year, of the reasons that I have lost a game, so I've lost many games, but of the reasons why I've lost a game, the number one reason that I have lost a game is deployment. Either I have, and generally what tends to happen is I've thrown my models down without really thinking. And as a result, I've been out of position. Now, interestingly, a lot of people think that deployment is really important for like counter deploying your opponent. That is true in many ways. But in truth, I have always found that when I've tried to like counter deploy outside of some very basic steps, I've ended up fucking my deployment up so much because I was too focused on what my opponent was doing and not just focused on what I wanted to do. So the only sort of thing you want to think about with counter deployment, there's basically two main things. There's a lot of things, but there's two basic things, okay? The first basic thing is make sure that you are I'm gonna say three, okay? The first basic thing is you want to know what terrain you are playing on, and you want to know how much of your stuff you are going to be deploying on the board. So this sort of links into your reserves, right? So if you know you're playing on UKTC, you can go, or WTC terrain, you kind of have a good idea of like, okay, I'll be able to hide behind sort of 3 large L-shaped ruins. So anything that you can't put behind this L-shaped ruins, you're either going to need to put really far back. So does it care about being really far back, or it's going to need to go in reserve? And that's the first rule. Like, what are you going to deploy? Is it going to be deployed? If so, it's got to hide behind the L-shaped ruins. If so, if what can't hide behind those ruins needs to be going in reserve. Okay. And generally you build your list around that. So you might be, there's no point in taking like 3 Rogul Dawns if you're playing on like a dense WTC board, because 3 Rogul Dawns and like, let's say 3 Lehman Russes, because you might only be able to like hide like 4 of those tanks, and the other 2 are going to start out in the open, and there's a good chance that they're just going to like die, just going to get fucking picked up. So what you do is you take 4 tanks, and then you spend the points that you would have put in the 2 tanks on something like scion blobs or artillery or something like that. So the first golden rule is what are you going to deploy. That should influence on what are you going to deploy on what is the terrain. First golden rule is what is the terrain. That's going to influence what are you going to deploy and what's going to be in your list. The second thing that you want to think about, and this is more for like counter deploying, you want to think about how much firepower your opponent has and what range they have on that firepower, and how much close combat your opponent has and what kind of movement they have on their close combat. So basically you want to think about threat ranges. So there's no point, that it's felt very weird to me, but sometimes I've genuinely deployed just like out on the open because I've just been playing, not hiding behind L-shaped ruins, because my opponent has been like Votan, and even though they've got great firepower, I know that they're not going to be able to bring it to bear turn 1. So it's like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to hide some stuff as like an insurance policy. But I know that I can have a few bits out because it's unlikely that my opponent's going to be able to bring this like 24-inch range laser bastard cannon to bear on me. Likewise, if I'm playing against like World Eaters, I might be like, okay, my opponent hasn't got much firepower, but there's still a good chance I'm going to want to take advantage of these ruins and deploy a bit further back, even though I'm not worried about his range, because I'm worried about his ability to like charge me. And if I can use the ruins, especially if I'm playing on like UKTC, that means if I stay an inch away from the walls, then my opponent can't fit his bases through the walls, but he can't get to engagement range through the walls either. So as a result, he's got to go around the walls, which helps extend like his charge range. So when it comes to counter deploying, really, when it comes to like deployment in general, there's the 3 golden rules of what's the fucking terrain. because that has, we said, a lot of influences. And then it's, okay, what can I, like, hide, and what's my opponent's, like, long-range shit? And then, you know, what's my opponent's, like, turn 1 charge, essentially. Sometimes you want to avoid turn 1 charges like the plague. Sometimes you really want your opponent to fucking go for that turn 1 charge. Because if he, like, takes one of his, like, uber death units and just sprints them at you, and then just, like, laminates himself, like, well, sort of, you know, just blows apart, like, 20 guardsmen, or blows apart, like, a chimera, that's, like, but that's fine, because now his death unit is out in the open. So, yeah, he's putting under a bit of pressure, but, you know, he's trading badly. And some players, good players won't fall for that. But players who are just in pure aggression, go, like always be ABC, always be charging mode, which, you know, tends to be, you know, which does happen a lot, who think pressure before all else. They don't really think about staging as much. They think more about, like, just going. Because they've, like, built this combo to get a turn 1 charge, like, well, fuck it, I might as well use this combo. Some people even fall into the trap knowingly, just because they're like, well, I've spent 300 points on this unit that can do turn 1 charges. If I don't take advantage of that, I feel like I'm wasting my unit. They're not wasting the unit, they are getting the unit wasted. So, that's, like, general things to do deployment. Sort of, if you say, what's the difference between deploying, like, a mech guard army versus a hybrid? So I can do that fairly quickly. It really just comes down to, for me, with my Met Guard, where my scouting units are. So let's just make up something quickly here. It's not going to be exactly right, all right? So let's say we've got our deployment zone, like, here. So we've got, like, one L-shaped ruin, like, here. And then maybe we've got, like, another sort of L-shaped ruin, kind of, like, here, and maybe there's, like, some one off at, like, a jaunty angle. So maybe I probably can't do it on fucking paint. You know what, let's do it, let's freehand that bitch. So maybe there's one off on, like, a jaunty angle, which is like, oh, you know, something like that, right? So I'll make the brush a little bit thicker. There we go. There you go. So in this situation, if I was playing like hybrid guard, what I would probably do is I would have, like, I'll use green for, like, my guys, right? So what I'd probably do if I'm playing hybrid guard, what I'm doing here is stacking infantry up 1 inch away behind the walls, as it were. Stacking infantry up like that. Probably taking advantage of this, like, if I know my opponent can't see through this wall, I'm going to stack infantry up where possible. I'm not going to be sticking out. What you don't want to do is have units sticking out around the corner like this. That's a big fucking no-no, because then the opponent only has a C1 model to then just, like, blast down the whole line and start killing the whole squad, right? So make sure you're hiding behind these ruins. When you've got the infantry down, you'll put, like, your tanks down. And all this kind of stuff, like tanks down first, tanks down sort of second, as it were. You can have things that, you know, a good thing you can do is you want the things that want to be fired directly sort of further forward. Basilisks, indirect fire things, any sort of command center, as it were, like maybe a Lord Solar Blob. You want to have sort of in a central position, something like that. The only thing that you need to be careful of, now we haven't drawn them on here, obviously, but the only thing, 1 minute, let's put that in yellow for the Lord Solar. Let me go over here. So the only thing you'd want to be careful of course, is angles firing in, like here. But typically you'll find that there will be, like, terrain mid-board. So maybe that's not such a big problem, but yeah, still keep an eye on your angles, basically. So that's sort of very standard, like, hybrid deployment. You have your infantry up front. They are clinging. They are an inch away from the walls, so you always want to be 1 inch away from the walls, okay? The reason why that matters is because the engagement range is 1 inch. So if you're just over 1 inch away from the wall, the opponent can't get their typically 32mm bases through the wall. So then they can't fight you through, then you're over 1 inch away, they can't fight you through the wall. So the reason, so if you had like, let's say we've got like, we'll do it in red, right? Let's say you've got like a World Eater unit here. If you've got a World Eater unit here that wants to like charge down like here, well, if our guys are over 1 inch away from the wall, then the big fucking, whether it's Angron or 8-bound or just Berserkers, they can't just charge the wall to get to you. They're going to have to go around. And that could easily elongate their charge distance. So those are the kind of things you want to be. That's what I mean. Like, you can sometimes deploy a little bit further ahead than you would expect. Because you're using the 1 inch rule to help. Now, if we get to hybrid guard, it's a little different. Okay, so what you tend to find with hybrid guard is you, specifically if you're using scouting units like scouting chimeras, which I pretty much always do use, then what you want to do with your hybrid guard deployment is, and again, we're just using, this is not a good example of a deployment map. We're just using this as a very, very basic example here, guys. You know, just for consistency, we'll lay it out the same way, right? So if you're playing like hybrid guard, you can actually be a little ballsy with this kind of stuff. So I typically, I might have my chimeras out like here, which might seem insane, right? Like your chimeras are out and exposed and fucked, right? And your opponent might even think your chimeras are out and exposed and fucked. Of course, you're not gotching your opponent. You have told them that you've got scout chimeras, and you've said that all your chimeras have a 6-inch scout at the beginning of the game. You've told them that as you first thing you do is take them to the list. But you have your scout mirrors out here, and so the reason why that's important is because if you get turn 1, you can be like fucking Gucci, bang, bang, bang. You might not be this aggressive, but my point is, you know, you have the option to start pushing forward and getting on those objectives early on. However, if you don't get turn 1, well, that's okay. You can what I call defensively scout. And so if you need to defensively scout, and we'll just, for example, we'll just use orange as this color. Then rather than scouting forwards, you know, you could scout this these couple of units. Maybe this one's sort of behind a bit of terrain. This one could go here. This one could sort of go here. Maybe this one just goes straight back because it gets out of enemy range. Because a lot of people don't take super long range guns anymore. A lot of people think that 24 inches is enough, but it's not. But you can do like a bit of defensive scout. You might sometimes, though, it's important to note. It's very important to note that sometimes, even on a defensive scout, you might go forwards. So you might have another piece of like terrain. 1 minute, I'll undo that. You might have another piece of terrain that's like here, okay? You know, something like that. Now, in that case, what you would do is you would deploy the chimera here, knowing that even if you go first, even if your opponent goes first, there's a good chance that you're gonna scout here and then basically, you know, fuck over your opponent's line of sight because he won't be able to see you through this. And he's lined up one of his units to go here, and now like he can't get you. So so basically that's the difference between the way I do mechanized deployments and hybrid deployments. Hybrid deployments are pretty much like locked in stone, defensive from the get-go. You're just hugging the terrain as best as you can. Typically you're using things like Krieg blobs and stuff like that. Mechanized deployments, I tend to be a lot more ballsy with them because of the fact that I have that scout move, and as a result I can scout defensively or aggressively depending on who gets first turn. So there you go. Fingers crossed. I hope that that answers a lot of people's questions. All right. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure. And unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.